All right, Manitoba, welcome back to another episode, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a wonderful day as always. Real fast, Manitoba, like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff that helps. Manitoba Freethinker Podcast on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, MB Freethinker on TikTok and X. But the big ask, as always, Manitoba, would be go to Rumble and watch the show there. Share that link. I'm always fighting that inevitable Facebook ban, and you could help me do that. All right, Manitoba. So like the title of the show says, definitely not Manitoba's brightest. And I'm going to show you guys a few articles, what I'm talking about. Some of these articles are pull your hair out stupid, but I mean, it's making the mainstream media, so I'm going to talk about it. The first one, I'll just pull it up, Manitoba. It makes you wonder who these articles are written for. I just, for the life of me, I have no idea, Manitoba. From the Free Press, Manitoba's surprisingly anti-climate government by Scott Forbes. Now, one thing the Free Press did get right is they said this is an opinion, definitely, because it ain't facts, but it should say stupid opinion. Last fall, some suspected the Manitoba NDP entered office unprepared to tackle climate change. It's not unimportant. The energy transition will drive Manitoba's future economy, feeding the horse that pulls the social cart. Those suspicions were confirmed in last Tuesday's budget. The only significant action on climate change from the Wabkanu's government has been to cut the gas tax, promoting more, not less, use of fossil fuels. So Manitoba, right off the get-go, if you're thinking he's complaining about Wabkanu saving us a little bit of money, you are right. Like, who is this guy talking to? I'll read on, though. That action alone, at a cost of about $250 million, dwarfs any token measures in the opposite direction. From day one in office, our new government has failed to articulate a clear policy on the most important issue of our era. Manitoba, is that the most important issue of our era? The Premier and Finance Minister were initially equivocal about carbon pricing, which is a key tool in the move to a low-carbon economy, as more than 100 economists, quote, in brackets, the experts, recently declared. Carbon pricing is not the only tool in the toolbox, but it is the most efficient tool. Says Scott Forbes, it's literally just taxing you to heat your home. How the fuck is that effective? We have winter in Manitoba, 200 plus days of minus 0 degree weather. It is literally a tax to heat your home. I'll read on, though. But in recent weeks, and to the dismay of many, Canoe threw his support behind federal opposition leader Pierre Poilievre and the Axe the Tax crowd. BC NDP Premier David Eby had the integrity to call out Pierre Poilievre's nonsense. Premier Canoe should have done the same. Manitoba, this is a quote-unquote journalist for the Winnipeg Free Press. This is disturbing. Who, like I said, first off, what this tells me is the Winnipeg Free Press is obviously paying him way too much money. If he's not affected at all by this, like, what bubble is this guy living in? Last Tuesday's budget deeply disappointed those expecting serious action on climate change after 7 years of a do-nothing PC government. Manitobans got more of the same. One need look no further than page 71 of the estimates of expenditure and the budget for climate action and energy innovation. In the description, it states that it does this, quote, works across departments with Crown agencies and external stakeholders to coordinate climate and energy-related matters that contribute to Manitoba become a clean energy leader while taking bold action to address climate change. Wow, that was a mouthful. Under the PC government in 2023-2024, the budget was a paltry $3.473 million. In 2024-2025, the new NDP government budget was, wait for it, $3.473 million. In real inflation-adjusted dollars, that's a budget cut. The only real difference that the new government added flowery rhetoric about, quote, bold action to address climate change without adding another dime. Similarly, the Green and Carbon Reduction Fund, page 171 of the estimates of expenditure, was frozen at the same level as the previous PC government. One thing, Manitoba, that's actually good news in this is the Wob Canoe's base is also finding out in real time that he is just all talk on all sides of the aisle. One hoped that Canoe and Finance Minister Adrian Saleh, after some early missteps last fall about carbon pricing, would steer the ship back on course at budget time. They did not. The Premier's most recent rhetoric, the Manitoba deserves a free pass on carbon pricing because of our clean energy grid, is nonsense. Remember, this is according to Scott Forbes. More than 70% of our energy use is fossil fuel based, mainly for heating and transportation. Getting to net zero means reducing our use of those fossil fuels. Other than cosmetic measures, there was nothing in the budget to address climate change and no plan presented to chart a path to do so. An EV rebate, fine, but without a plan to build out a charging network, EV uptake will proceed at a snail's pace. A promise of 5,000 heat pumps that won't move the needle on a shift to a low-carbon economy. These are window dressing, not a serious climate action plan. Annexing the carbon tax won't make life more affordable for most Manitobans. In fact, quite the opposite. The rebate makes 4 out of 5 families better off, and despite the claim of the Axe the Tax crowd, carbon pricing has a trivial effect on inflation. It's disappointing that he's actually continuing to spout his literal lies. 4 out of 5 families are better off. What tax ever made 4 out of 5 families better off? It's so see-through. Most Manitobans know that. That's why I believe it's 82% of Manitobans are not in favor of the carbon tax. So, I mean, Manitoba, we, like I said, maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel because Wob Canoe's base is seeing what Wob Canoe is all about. And he just wants to say whatever sounds good at that time. Look how many times he's flip-flopped on the carbon tax. Every time there's someone else that flies into Manitoba, whether it be a federal leader or another premier, he flip-flops every single time. But Manitoba, so maybe this is who Scott Forbes is talking to. These people, debt-burdening Manitobans, but 27% are feeling better about it, data shows. I mean, Manitoba, this is why you can't just read the headlines. New numbers show Manitobans are struggling to keep up with their bills, but they're not stressed about it. And then in the very next statement, the latest consumer debt index from accounting firm MNP Limited finds that between Manitoba and Saskatchewan, 27% of people feel better about their current debt situation compared to last year. Manitoba, what does that mean? That means 70% are not okay with it. 70% of Manitobans are stressing out. So while people like Scott Forbes are talking to the 27%, coincidentally, there's a 20% who are okay with the carbon tax and a 30% Justin Trudeau approval rating. It's very clear that these people are the same group. And they're in a bubble talking to themselves. Scott Forbes is literally talking to the 27%. That's 3 in 10 Manitoba. 7 in 10 Manitobans are stressing out. But it just goes over their head. So let's take a look at how Manitoba feels, honestly, about the carbon tax. I'll pull it up. A new poll by Ledger. Okay, Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Manitoba Premier's position on carbon tax increase. I do find it funny that every single poll done, it's so minimal how many participants that take actually take part in these surveys. So the question, Manitoba, is 7 of 10 provincial premiers have asked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to not raise the carbon tax on April 1st. Do you support or oppose Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew joining other premiers and telling the Prime Minister to not raise the carbon tax? That is the question. In Manitoba, 83. So dark red is strongly support, pink is somewhat support, gray is somewhat oppose, and black is strongly oppose. So 83% of Manitobans either somewhat support or strongly support Wab Kinew asking Justin Trudeau to not raise the carbon tax. Outside of Winnipeg, it is 92% somewhat support or strongly support. And then you could see it is 78 urban, 80% suburban, and 91% rural. So high levels of support for Premier Kinew telling PM not to raise carbon tax across all demographics. So males, same question, males, 84% somewhat support or strongly support Wab Kinew asking for Justin Trudeau to not raise the carbon tax. Females, 83%. So it's pretty similar. Ages 18 to 34. What is that? 46. 84%. I'm terrible at math, Manitoba. Either way, how about this? How about I just zoom in and you guys can read for yourself. So the point is, Manitoba, that overall 80% or 82% of Manitobans do not support the carbon tax. So that is who Scott Forbes is talking to. Scott Forbes is talking to that 20% that support carbon tax. It's just mind-blowing. But Manitoba, it doesn't end there. It's all over the map. I wonder how these people get jobs. Scott Forbes writing to the 30% that believe that taxing you, taking your hard-earned money somehow helps the climate, especially when it's a necessity in Manitoba to heat your homes when we have over 200 days of minus 0 degree temperature. And what do they say? Heat pumps that work up to minus 25, minus 30 degrees. We get temperatures minus 40. Manitoba women need to work 3 months extra to make what men do in 1 year. According to CCPA. I mean, I hope most in Manitoba have heard of Jordan Peterson, because he quite elegantly has debunked this multiple times. So obviously I don't need to. He does it much more properly. But I'm going to read you this mind-blowing article. In 2024, they are still lying to you, Manitoba. It's taken Manitoba women from January 1st, 2023 until April 4th, 2024 to make the same income as their male collegiate colleagues did last year. Real fast, Manitoba, do you know how to stop this from happening? And actually, the only way of fixing this quote-unquote gender pay gap is getting rid of freedom. Freedom is the only thing that is contributing to this gender pay gap in Canada and in Manitoba in 2024. Numbers from, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, this organization, whatever it is, what it is. I'm just going to read. Numbers from the CCPA show that on average, women make 71 cents for every dollar a man makes, setting them back 3 months on an annual basis. Also, Manitoba, what business that operate in a capitalistic format would hire a man That's all any businesses would ever do. If they can get away with paying someone 70 cents on the dollar, every business would only hire women. Obviously. Molly McCracken, Manitoba director for CCPA, said racialized women make even less. Indigenous women earn 58 cents on the dollar compared to white men, and women of color earn 59 cents on the dollar, she said, adding that none of these numbers have changed markedly in the past 30 years. The impacts, she said, are not isolated to someone's pocket. Quote, women's unequal earnings are a major driver of Manitoba's last place ranking among all provinces when it comes to gender equity, McCracken said. We have persistently high rates of poverty among women and lower rates of women participating in the labor force. So that affects child poverty because we know child poverty is concentrated amongst single-parent households who are predominantly female-headed households, end quote. Wow, in real-time Manitoba, we have years of Manitoba like leaders and like politicians and the mainstream media touting how great it is to be a single mother and being a single parent is so good and perfect. Well, it's coming back to bite them in the ass now, isn't it? The expert noted that 60% of minimum wage workers are women and called the current minimum wage a poverty wage. Quote, it's below the living wage of $19.21 an hour, so if women are working several jobs in minimum wage, they're not able to make enough to improve their economic status and get ahead, she said. McCracken said there are ways to address the pay gap and the problems attached to it. Quote, we need thousands of new childcare spaces because there are deserts where people have access to no childcare. Raising the minimum wage to a living wage, expanding education and training opportunities to help women advance their education, end quote. Manitoba, all this exists. Maybe not the childcare, but I'm an electrician, for example. So women are not paid less, definitely. They have a leg up when it comes to hiring because there'll be positions that are specifically meant for females in the trades. And not only that, Manitoba, when you go to school, you get paid. Or when you complete a level in the trades, women make more money. Every time a male gets advances in his level of apprenticeship, women, I think, make like, if the male gets 1,000, the girl's getting 2,000. So there are programs out there that specifically are targeted for women to give them more money and to make their employment opportunities easier. The reason they don't take it? Choice, freedom. Women generally don't want to do those jobs. They would rather be teachers and early childhood educators. They just typically pick jobs that pay less. They have the freedom and the choice to go work on the oil fields and work 16, 17 hours a day outside in minus 40. They can, be firefighters and police officers, but they choose. They have the freedom and they choose to do other jobs. So, I mean, most anyone with a brain would know that in 2024, if there is any gender gap, it's due to choice and freedom. And raising the minimum wage is not always the answer because that is just going to make businesses hire less people, put more people on the unemployment line. But I will read on. Measures preventing discrimination, harassment, and violence in the workplace are also necessary. Quote, Manitoba was a leader in the 80s. We were the first province to introduce pay equity legislation, but it only covers the public sector. It doesn't cover the private sector, McCracken said, so we've fallen behind the rest of the country on the legislative agenda on this. She said probe research polls that 78% of Manitobans strongly agree that Manitoba needs tougher pay equity laws to make sure that women are paid the same as men for work of equal value. And there it is, Manitoba. What the fuck is equal value? Because in every industry in Manitoba, if you're a male or female and you work, say, an hour, you get paid the same. If you're an electrician, if you're a teacher, if you're a police officer, if you work at Dollarama. The minister responsible for gender equity, Nahani Fontaine, who is the most racist politician I think we have, said when the NDP was in opposition, a Pay Transparency Act was introduced twice by Malaya Marcelino, now the Minister of Labour and Immigration. She also referenced announcements vowing to increase $10 day daycare. Quote, now that as a government, this is a priority for us and we are committed to ensuring that we get equal pay for women, Fontaine said. Right now, she said jurisdictional scans are being made and stakeholders are being spoken with. Quote, I think we're looking at legislation in the near future, end quote, Fontaine said. So real fast, do MLAs, for example, do women get paid less? Nope. So find me a business or a sector where women get paid less for the same amount of work. It doesn't exist, Manitoba. This article is also just targeted for that 30%. But either way, Manitoba, I had to listen to it, so you guys do too.
It's taken women until today, April 4th, 2024, to make the same income as their male colleagues did in 2023. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says on average, women make 71 cents for every dollar a man makes, with racialized women making even less. It says this gap drives Manitoba's last place ranking among all provinces for gender equality and worsens its child poverty rates. Molly McCracken with the CCPA says 78% of Manitobans want legislative changes closing wage gaps, and she says there are ways to get there.
We need thousands of new childcare spaces because there's deserts where people have access to no childcare, raising the minimum wage to a living wage, expanding education and training opportunities to help women advance their education.
All right. What is going on here, Manitoba? So, yeah, like I said, these people are fucking insane. But Manitoba, there's even more. I mean, low IQ is just running through the province, Manitoba. What is going on? Suspect shoots himself during kidnapping incident, Manitoba RCMP say. I mean, this is fucking too good. You can't even make this shit up. A 35-year-old man from northern Manitoba is recovering in a Winnipeg hospital after what police say was a self-inflicted shooting during a kidnapping incident. RCMP were called to the community of God's Lake Narrows on Monday around 8 a.m. in response to a reported shooting. After the man was found with life-threatening injuries and rushed to hospital, the police investigation determined that he, along with a 28-year-old woman, had kidnapped another man at gunpoint and confined him in an outdoor location. Police say he shot himself in the process. Bravo, good sir. The woman remains in custody and both suspects have been charged with kidnapping with a firearm and forcible confinement or concealment. Like I said, Manitoba, low IQ is just flowing through the province right now. And the last article I'm going to bring up. Like I said, Manitoba, the left is a cult. Now, I know a lot of haters want to right away bring up the protesters at the borders, if you want to call them right-wing protesters, which is far different than when people are just told to go protest and have no vested interest in what they're protesting for. Just look at this picture. Picture says 1,000 words, right? Winnipeg demonstrators protest RBC's fossil fuel investments. Does this picture look like something? It's literally the Palestinian flags everywhere. It's the same fucking group that just go in front of the legend protest against Israel. Which I'm not saying yay or nay about that. That's a whole separate issue. I'm just saying, what do the Palestinian protesters have to do with fossil fuel investments? It is just a cult, Manitoba. They are just told, go here, go there. Hey, real fast, Erin Grauberger, I do see your comments. I unfortunately can't type back. I'm multi-streaming to a few different things, so I'm just not on Facebook. But I do see that you are saying stuff. I'm going to check it out after the show. But from global news, a group of demonstrators gathered outside the RBC branch on Main Street Saturday to protest the organization's support for oil and gas projects. I mean, Manitoba, do they have nothing better to do? They're protesting a bank for investing in oil and gas projects. I mean, like I said, Manitoba, these people have no vested interest in what they're doing. They're just told, go here and protest. They're not even bringing the right signs. There's nothing saying protesting fossil fuel investments. It literally looks like an anti-Israeli protest. A 2023 report called Banking on Climate Chaos revealed RBC invested over $40 billion in the fossil fuel industry in 2022. Do you know how many people that the fossil fuel industry feeds? And derivatives of oil, like, make basically all the clothes and cars and phones that we all use. Everything is a derivative of oil or the oil industry. These people would be in poverty if it wasn't for that. We'd all be starving. So they released that they invest $40 billion in the fossil fuel industry. That's not okay, says Kirby Cote, one of the organizers behind the demonstration. We need to hold them accountable for the money that they're giving people who are destroying our planet, end quote. Cote says the rally was also meant to show solidarity with Indigenous land defenders. Like I said, Manitoba, it's just a cult. No vested interest in what they're actually protesting for. They have not had their voices heard. They have not been allowed a seat at the table, and there has been no actionable change. RBC continues to fund fossil fuels, which directly creates violence to our Indigenous communities here in Canada and destroys their land. That is just a word salad, Manitoba. Funding, I mean, I'm not even going to get into it. They just want to say all the right words. Directly creates violence to our Indigenous communities. But they're quiet, they're silent when, actually people are committing violence. Silent. Crickets. In a statement to Global News, the RBC spokesperson said they embrace their role as a bank that will support clients and communities in accelerating the transition to a greener economy. They add that the bank is actively engaging with Indigenous leaders and communities to discuss constructive ideas that reinforce reconciliation and support community healing and prosperity. RBC also says they plan to spend $1 billion in the next 6 years on developing, quote, innovative climate solutions. But Vanessa Grace with Indigenous Climate Action says she doesn't have much confidence in that province. Quote, anything that seems like a major movement for RBC to be respecting Indigenous and environmental rights should be well criticized. Grace says RBC needs to be held accountable for its role it plays in continuing Canada's fossil fuel use. I think it doesn't tell the full and true story if we focus on fossil fuels, mining, and natural gas companies alone, Grace says, because they're lifeline in the banks. Grace says Indigenous nations need free, prior, and informed consent of projects happening on their land. She adds a group of Indigenous land defenders will head to RBC's annual general meeting in Toronto on April 11th, looking for a seat at the table. Good luck with that. Saturday's demonstration was just one of a series of protests across Canada to mark Fossil Fuels Day. I do like the play on words, though, not going to lie. It was attended in solidarity by a group of pro-Palestinian demonstrators who hold weekly rallies in Winnipeg's downtown. Exactly, Manitoba. They are all part of the same cult. But Grace saying all this, right? I bet you she literally probably fucking drove there and drove home. This is classical rules for thee, but not for thee, Manitoba. We all know none of these people live by what they preach. 30 minutes. All right. Manitoba, it is 30 minutes, so I think we're just going to, call it a show. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a live show Tuesday and Thursday, 7 o'clock, so I will be back in a couple days. Share this show with your friends, Manitoba. That is the best way to help out. I love you guys, and I will see you guys in 2 days. 7 o'clock. Bye.